Shut up and sit down.
Hi guys, I'm Dodge, this is Bigmeks Workshop and Paint Studio, and today we're doing something very different to what we usually do. It's been a long time since we did a terrain video, but as we tried to do a live stream over the holiday period and that didn't work out, we ended up making a tutorial instead out of some of the footage that we did have. So having lots of Pringles cans around as it's been the holiday season and they were on offer, I decided to make a fuel dump nice and quickly. And once we've finished with this video, you should have all the measurements you're going to need to do this yourself, as the measurements are key for this. You will need 2 Pringles tubes, as you're going to need both the lids. And me and Andy wanted to make some line of sight blocking terrain, but for vehicles. Just something not building size, but we can just put along any other building we've got and anywhere else on the board without it looking out of place. And one of the first things we had to do was get some timber from B&Q. We got a whole load of this cut, and it's 12 inch by 12 inch, which is a good starting size. And the measurements for a Pringles can when you've got 2 lids on it is 10¼ inches, approximately, thereabouts. It's very close. Now, I'm not a master at building terrain at all, and I'm definitely not a master of measuring. A lot of our subscribers already know that, so you're just going to have to bear with me as I try and ramble through this and try and give you the information as best I can. So what I like to do with a lot of our terrain is put trims on these edges. Now the MDF is actually 5mm thick, so what I'm going to need to do is mark off another 5mm around the edge. That's for later on when we put the trim on. We're going to use an entire inch of something, score it, fold it around there. And that's going to add an extra layer of depth to it. The diameter of a Pringles can with the lid on is approximately 3 inches. So I need at least a minimum of 3 inches here. So I decided what I'd do is I would go from that line that I've drawn and go for 4 inches. That will give us enough room to put some supports on the underneath and make it look nice and snazzy, and also realistic would be the word, like it's designed that way, because you know industrial equipment's designed very specifically. So we'll do a 4-inch line from the last one. So currently the entire workspace is 4¼ inches, and then we need another line for the trim, so 4½ inches total space is what you're going to need by 12. And now, obviously after that I'm going to saw the excess off, and we've now got a nice flat base for our fuel dump. And obviously we can't just stick that on like that, it's going to need supports. But that 4 inches is going to give us plenty of work room to make that. So we need to make the supports, but I also want to put those 2 trim strips around that you see. Now to make the support, I'm going to have to draw around the Pringles can, but Pringles cans have a metal top and bottom that you can't draw around, not fully. We want the diameter of the purple part of the can, not the outer can. So what I'm doing here is measuring 3 inches in from the edge, from the top, sorry, and we're going to put a line in there, because if I break this can into 3 parts and go 3 inches and 7 inches as the main lines, when I put the trim round it's going to look natural. It's also going to cover the marks up that we've left. So all I did was score that, then go in with a razor saw. Then I realised Pringles cans are quite a lot more durable than one would think, so I went off camera and just used a regular saw. Now finally, besides the Pringles can, one of the main things we're going to have to do is make these supports, and the measurements for these are quite crucial. So what we've got here is we've got 4-inch blocks along, and they're 1 inch tall, but I have put a halfway inch mark, so that's ½ an inch line. The idea of that was to put the bottom of the Pringles can, the circle of the diameter of the Pringles can, in the centre at the bottom and draw around it. And that way we'd get a nice shape for it to sit in. Except that wasn't going to happen quite right, it would have looked odd, so what I ended up doing was putting in an extra line and doing 1/4 inch. So now we've got 1/4 inch line, a half line and 1 inch line, and we're going to line the Pringles can up in the centre with the 1/4 inch line, And this is where I made a big mistake. Spent all that time sawing it in half and then used the metal end of the Pringles can to draw around. So that's a mistake on my part. But I'm laying the ruler across there so I can lay the Pringles can on top and make sure it's dead center there. And all in all, you're going to want to make 4 of these. You probably could get away with just doing 2. I do find it's best to use 4 so you can cut this up pretty straight at the end. Now we're going to go in from the outside edge of each of those supports by 1/3 of an inch. And once we've marked that off, we're going to go from the corners, as you can see there, well, from the top down to those corners, and that's going to give us a nice angled cut to go down later on, as triangles are quite good at holding things up, so it makes sense that that would be the formation rather than just doing a rectangle. It just looks a little bit more natural. And what I did here was just add some PVA glue on one piece and super glue on the other, and that would give an instant bond, and then it would also, the PVA glue would also dry later on, securing that bond even further. Make sure you get your designs the right way round when gluing these back to back. You don't want to glue one upside down. What I realised after doing that was having only 2 pieces stuck together didn't make it quite thick enough. So what I suggest doing is cutting a piece the same size. You don't have to put any markings on it, just 4 inch by 1 inch, and both of your measured designs on each side of it. That way we get a much better depth, but I didn't realise that at the time and it was too late to take the other one apart. So I just stuck a 4 inch by 1 inch piece over the side of it and made do. Now the first cut I made was straight through those angled ones, and that's basically just to demonstrate to you the kind of design we're going for here. And be really careful when cutting foam core. Sometimes the blade doesn't go in. I managed to cut my finger open twice while working on these projects, straight down past my fingernail, so that wasn't fun. So do be careful with the sharp blades. As you can see, I've carved those insides out, and I wouldn't recommend trying to carve all the way around them. I'd carve down and do little triangle motions so you've just got little bits sticking up, and then carve those off. They don't have to be perfectly smooth. As you can see, that sits in there pretty snug, even though I did make the mistake of not drawing the inside edge of the Pringles can. Next, some Jacob's Cracker box. If you can get these Jacob's Cracker variety boxes and you have seen or you're going to see the terrain vlog with the rest of the footage in, definitely pick those up because you can make some really interesting textures and stuff out of that. And the card's pretty much the same as cereal box card, so if you don't have this, you have cereal box card, use that as well. What we're going to do is measure, in fact this is quite an important measurement. 9.5 inches, just under 9.5 inches, goes all the way around the diameter of the inside of that Pringles can, for anyone who wanted to know how far you needed to cut that or what size piece you would need. I was going to cut this into an inch strip. It didn't quite look right, it looked a little bit too big. We're going to make 2 of these, so I switched from using imperial to metric, and that's exactly 2 centimeters. Just because it was easier than working out all the markings on the rule. I told you I'm not good with measurements, but these measurements are correct. That much I know. It's just when it comes to breaking down inches into smaller measurements, it's a bit of a pain after it gets down past a quarter. So what I'm going to do now is the same bonding technique from before, because I like to get a quick bond, but I like it to last. Super glue does flake over time, especially against card. So I'm adding PVA glue on one side and a little bit of super glue on the other. There's only a tiny bit of overhang. Now I've picked up the wrong Pringles can there. What I want is that one with the metal bottom on. And the reason for that is instead of trying to put these on once you've glued everything down, you can use the bottom metal part of the Pringles can to make sure this lines up absolutely perfect. So now you can see why we cut the end off. We can slide this up and down and take it off if we want to and make another one. So that's how you'd make nice trims for your Pringles cans. So if you were making something stood up with pipes coming out of it, some other industrial terrain, you could easily do that and add lots of detail to it. So what I've done here is bonded that piece on with PVA glue, and obviously that's the 3-inch mark, the other one's on the 7-inch mark. And what we can do is we pop those in there, and once we put glue in there, they will be pretty much completely seamless. Do make sure the trim edges there that you've got, where they connect, they line up so you can hide them under the bottom. And that's what we've got so far. It does need some extra detailing work. There's not much further left to go in this video really. If you're hoping at this point in the video that I'm going to paint it on camera, unfortunately I'm not. I can probably give you a list of the paints I used because all I did was airbrush it and throw pigments and stuff at it. Really lazy. I was trying to get this one done for you as we've got a backlog of videos me and Andy need to complete. So what I'm doing here with the foam core that we've cut is using a bit of ready-made filler from B&Q. Any filler will do. It's wall filler, as long as it's nice and wet. Obviously you don't want it too runny. At this point I wanted it quite thick actually to fill in those gaps. You will find if you don't cut foam core in a straight line, it will tear the foam, so I need something for the Pringles can to bond to, so I did fill that in quite a lot with thicker stuff. And we're going to cover the entire foam core. You can do this in multiple layers if you need to and you just can't seem to fill that gap. And once that's on there and started to dry, we're going to use a completely different brush. This is a old pound shop brush that's quite stiff. Just going to use the bristles to stab into the plaster and start texturing this, so when it gets painted it will look like concrete. It's a really good technique. We use this on all of our buildings as well. Just stops it being flat or looking like a bit of foam core. Next up we've got to do the trim on the outside of the base, just to add a little bit more depth. That's not actually bonded on there. Also, I'll tell you this now after painting it. Paint the Pringles can and the base separately, because getting the brush underneath there or dry brushing without hitting the rest of your paintwork is a real pain. So this is a cereal box card, and when you tear open a cereal box to use, keep one of those straight edges at the top. You can push your ruler up against that. It's going to be perfectly in line with the rest of the paper, so you can get a nice straight line all the way through there. And the measurements for this are every 1/4 inch we're going to make a line. Right, we're going to make a dot. Now we're going to line those up. And I like to make a whole batch of this at one time. I'd rather have too much than have to go back and remeasure and start recutting. So once you've got a ruler on a surface like this, you may as well just do a whole bunch of 1/4 inch strips all the way along. The reason I've done it on this side isn't just so you can see the camera. It also helps when scoring this. So what we're going to do with our first line, we're going to score that. The second line is the one we're going to cut through. So now we've got 1/2 inch worth of trim. And once we take that off, we should be able to score it. What I tend to do with long pieces like this is try and score it using the ruler. So what I do is I line that up with the score. Sorry, I'm still scoring that one. Give it a bit of a bend in the centre, and then using the ruler to push down and hold the card together, try and bend the whole thing down on itself, and that will help score it. So line that up and then just push ever so slightly, and that line that you've scored will start to show up. And once it starts to go, you can just start fiddling with it with your fingers, and it will bend. You don't want to go too deep in this, because what will happen is the other side of the card will start to split, and it starts to make your trim look tatty. As it's such a thin piece, it can be quite awkward. But at this point, as you can see, I'm just squeezing it together, and it will score. And all you got to do really is I've been using the same technique with glue actually. Just PVA glue on the card and super glue on the base so it bonds instantly, and then holding it down. and just going all the way around the edges. As you can see, the card wasn't quite long enough. I made a mistake again there, but I'm not a professional terrain builder. There are some great terrain builders out there. They do a much better job than I do. So all that's really left to do with this is to just add some extra details to it. Now, all these are the coils from, well, the old coils from the vape or e-cigs. If you know anyone who smokes one of those and you do 40k, get them to save all their coils for your terrain, because they're absolutely brilliant. That's just a couple of hatches I found in a spare box, just cobbled together. Put some straws in those coils and added a little bit of plastic card tubing to the end of those and bonded that together. And that's about it for the building part, guys. I want to put some posters on here or some warning logos, and I mean, all I have to do at this point is throw on a bit of paint. It's not the greatest paint job, guys, but I was in a rush to get this one finished. It's mainly all pigment. The colours for this are just two different varieties of burnt umber. That's the Model Air one, the Game Air, and I think it was gold by Model Air Metallic. And before doing those golds and everything else, you do want to put a poster paint coat on this as a base coat, and that will keep it all nice and protected and give the acrylic paint from the airbrush or spray can a little bit of something to bond to. And obviously the concrete bits were just done with regular Games Workshop sort of dry brushes over the grey paint that I mixed out of kids poster paints from the pound shop. So I hope that helped you out, guys. I hope the measurements really do help, and we've got some special thank yous before we finish this video off. Big thank you to our patrons: Cliff Leonard, Joe Spearpoint, Laurel Tarley, Ludwig Hofbauer, Warren Brunsdorf, Danny Wark and Chris Lindquist. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting our channel. If you want to become a patron and help support this channel as well, all the links are in the description for all our other social media. And a huge thanks to the Outpost. So if you can't be bothered to make your own terrain, there are affiliate link down below. Get a huge discount on terrain, hobby gear, stuff like that, and when you order from them we get a little bit of store credit, which helps out the studio and helps out the channel with all the other bits and pieces we need to get so we can make more videos for you guys. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one, guys.